This is now the culmination of the Babylonian captivity. Zechariah, Malachi, Haggai are written after God has released the Jews from their captivity. You got to listen now. Not listening, you're not going to appreciate your Bible. God had decreed that Jerusalem would be destroyed, temple would be destroyed, which happened in 586 BC by the Babylonians, and that the Jews would be under the yoke of the Babylonians for 70 years. If you look at the history, there were roughly 3 deportations of the Jews by the Babylonians: 604 BC, 597 BC, 586 BC. God had decreed that the kings of Babylon would be the dominant power over the world, conquer all the kingdoms. Then God said after 70 years, he would send forth Cyrus, Persian Medes Empire. He would conquer Babylon, make a decree, and set the peoples free to return to their lands and rebuild. Zechariah is written when the Jews have been released. Notice they're in the land. They've returned. They're going to rebuild. Now, astonishingly, shockingly, both Zechariah and Daniel state that they will be scattered again all over the world, and that Jerusalem and the temple will be destroyed a second time. That's in Daniel chapter 9, 20 to 27. Now, pay attention again. Zechariah here from chapters 11 to 14 and Daniel chapter 9 prophesy that the second temple, Jerusalem, will be destroyed once again, and the people will be scattered once again. Isn't that ironic? So here they are in the land, and God is already telling them, you're not going to stay here for long. This is written around the 6th century BC, 500 years before the time of our Lord. And then over 500 years later, Jerusalem destroyed, temple destroyed. They are scattered now all over the world and left without a land for 1900 years. So here again, the Jews are going to hear sad news. The Jews are going to hear sad news. What's the news they're going to hear? Don't get too comfortable. You're not going to stay in the land. I'm going to throw you out of the land again. That's the context, right? So let's read. Open your doors, O Lebanon, that a fire may consume your cedars. Wail, O Cyprus, for the cedar has fallen, because the mighty trees have been destroyed. Now, this is poetic language to refer to the destruction of these people's cities, but specifically the Jews who live in these places. Wail, O oaks of Bashan, for the impenetrable forest has come down. There's a sound of the shepherd's wail, for their might is destroyed. There's a sound of the young lion's roar, for the pride of the Jordan is destroyed. Speaking of the Jews. Okay, let's get into it. Thus says Yahweh my God, shepherd the flock doomed to slaughter. This right there would have shocked the Jews. We're doomed to slaughter? Yes. Why? Because you are ingrates. Though I bring you back and set you free, you're going to continue your rebellion and hatred of me and sin against me, leaving me no choice but to have you slaughtered again. See that? Those who buy them slaughter them and are not held guilty. And each of those who sell them says, blessed be Yahweh, need I become rich. Here, God is taking a shot at what the kings did. The kings of Judah, by entering into pacts with the Gentiles and by sinning against God, brought the slaughter upon their people. Even though they thought by entering into relations with the nations, they were being enriched, they didn't realize that doing that became a snare, because by entering into these relations with these nations, they ended up worshiping their gods, committing idolatry. thereby being God's wrath upon their people. But to them, it didn't matter. What mattered to them was they're getting rich. See the selfishness and the greed? This is a poetic way of saying, because what your kings did in wanting the approval of the nations, in wanting the love of the nations, wanting the nations to look upon them and respect them, wanting their attention, not the attention of God, they entered into covenants with these people, and they were moved to worship their gods and goddesses, thereby bringing God's wrath by then removing his hand of protection, so that those very nations came and destroyed their flock. But they were looking at it short term. They didn't see the long term. They saw short term success and wealth. You understand what he's saying? Now watch what God says. For I will no longer spare the inhabitants of the land. Wait. He's talking about a second expulsion. Behold, I will cause the men to fall, each to another's hand, into the hand of his king, and they will crush the land, and I will not deliver them from their hand. Right? Now, when they returned into the land, they didn't have kings anymore. They had a governor, Zerubbabel. So he was a governor, but not a king, but he functioned, right, as a king. So, in the hand of his king does not necessarily mean the Judean king, the son of David. There was no king. Zerubbabel, a descendant of David, was a governor, but not a king. So the king here is most likely a reference to the Gentile king whom God would send to destroy Jerusalem. If that's the case, then it's referring to the Roman emperor. Because who destroyed the temple and Jerusalem in 70 AD, the second temple? The Roman emperor. And in the short term, it can even refer to the pagan Antiochus, Epiphanes, who would come in the 2nd century, slaughter thousands of Jews, defile the temple, build an altar to Zeus, and slaughter a pig in the temple, resulting in Hanukkah. See what's happening here? God is preparing them for another slaughter and expulsion. But watch how bad it gets. So I shepherded the flock doomed to slaughter, hence the afflicted of the flock. And I took for myself 2 staffs. The one I called favor, right, God's mercy. The other I called union. Why? Because God now wanted to bring the tribes together. Remember, they were divided into 2 kingdoms. You had the southern kingdom, Judah, Jerusalem, the capital, where David reigned. But then during the reign of Rehoboam, the son of Solomon, this is all in 1 Kings. Read chapters 11 forward. Jeroboam opposed Rehoboam, took 9.5 tribes, and started the northern kingdom with Samaria becoming the capital. Then came the king of Assyria, 8th century BC, attacked Samaria, took the 9.5 tribes, scattered them, brought them into Assyria, and had them mix in with 5 other nations, creating the Samaritans. Right? But what God is saying is, there won't be 2 kingdoms. They're going to be one again. But what happens? So I shepherded the flock. Then I annihilated the 3 shepherds in 1 month, for my soul was impatient with them, and their soul also was weary of me. Okay, now watch. The 3 shepherds here may be referring back to the time when Babylon attacked, and is referring to 3 kings of Judah, maybe Jehoiakim, Jehoiachin, Zedekiah, or it may be referring to prophets, priests, and kings. That the prophets and priests and kings, these three offices, a prophet, a priest, and king, had to shepherd his people aright, but sadly, what arose among them were false prophets, wicked priests, and wicked kings. So God would annihilate them as well. But who is going to shepherd the flock doomed to slaughter? Who is going to annihilate the three shepherds in a month? Because the soul was impatient with them. And their soul also was weary of me, meaning I was disgusted with them because they didn't want to have nothing to do with me. Who? You know what's shocking? It's Zechariah. But he's speaking on behalf of Yahweh for Yahweh. Why? Watch. Thus says Yahweh my God, shepherd. Zechariah is playing out. This is like a played out parable. Symbolically, he's shepherding them, but not in actuality. Because he's telling Zechariah, shepherd them. This is a played out parable. Pay attention here. That's why I want you to pay attention so you don't get confused what's going on here. Zechariah is not the governor. He's a prophet. So he's not going to literally shepherd them, but he is playing out this parable where in this parable, he's acting as the shepherd who's actually God. So he is talking to them, presenting himself to them as God. When I say I'm shepherding you, I'm playing out this parable in which God is the real shepherd. You understand what he's doing here? Do you understand? Yahweh's telling Zechariah, shepherd them. But this is a played out parable where Zechariah plays the role of God, the divine shepherd. He's the shepherd. So he's speaking for him because Zechariah never destroyed the three shepherds in 1 month. He didn't have that power. Right? Then I said, I will not shepherd you. What is to die, let it die. What is to be annihilated, let it be annihilated. And let those remain consume one another's flesh. And I took my staff, favor, right? Cut it in pieces, to break my covenant, which I had cut with all the peoples. Zechariah never made a covenant with all the peoples. You see what he's doing? You understand? Zechariah never made a covenant with the people. But Zechariah is playing out the role of God, who is the shepherd, who did make a covenant with them, who will destroy them. You understand what's happening here, right? So I took my staff, favor, and cut in pieces to break my covenant, which I had cut with all the peoples. He did not make a covenant. God did. But he's playing out the role of the divine shepherd so people can see him physically playing out the role of God, who's their shepherd. So it's broken on that day, and thus the afflicted of the flock who were watching me knew that it was the word of Yahweh. You see? He's the one playing it out. So he's telling them, I'm acting as Yahweh to you, showing you what Yahweh will do to you because of your rebellion. And I said to them, if it is good in your sight, give me my wages, but if not, never mind. In other words, since I'm done shepherding you, since I'm finished, right? I'm done. It's over. Pay me my wages for being your shepherd. You understand? Pay me my wages. I'm done. I'm not going to shepherd you anymore. Give me my wages. Give me what you think my worth is. Now watch here. So they weighed out 30 shekels of silver as my wages. Now you're going to see why this is an insult. Then Yahweh said to me, throw it to the potter. Now I received the connection from Matthew 27. That valuable price at which I was valued by them. Did you catch it? When they gave Zechariah 30 pieces of silver, it wasn't his wages. It was God's wages because he was acting on God's behalf. So they told God, here's what we think your value is. you're only worth 30 shekels. Are you seeing the connection with Christ? When they paid Judas 30 pieces of silver, fulfilling Zechariah, those pieces of silver was the value that they valued God's worth. They're telling God, this is what your value is. This is your worth. You're only worth 30 pieces of silver, 30 shekels of silver. Do you understand the connection with Christ? So when they gave Zechariah 30 pieces of silver, the 30 pieces of silver was the value of who? Who did they value as being worth 30 pieces of silver? Not Zechariah, because he was acting on behalf of God. God. But when did they give to God 30 pieces silver? When Judas betrayed him. And when did they, watch here, throw it to the potter? When they took the 30 piece silver and bought a potter's field. It has nothing to do with Zechariah. Zechariah is playing out a parable pointing to the future. What will happen when God shows up and they value him at 30 piece silver, and what they will then do with that money? So who was talking to Zechariah? And who is the shepherd that Zechariah was standing in place of, on behalf of, playing his role before their eyes? I don't think you caught it. So it's broken on the day, thus afflicted of the flock who were watching me knew that it was the word of Yahweh. There it is. The shepherd that Zechariah was standing in place of, whose role he was playing out before their eyes, was the word of Yahweh, Jesus Christ. Do you see it before your eyes? Verse 11. Then they knew it was the word of Yahweh. So the Yahweh that was speaking was the word of Yahweh. He is their divine shepherd, whom they valued at 30 pieces of silver. Do you see that Zechariah 11 is another proof text for the divinity of Jesus? He is the divine shepherd. He is Yahweh, the shepherd, who's not the Father, but the word of the Father, who was valued at 30 pieces of silver. Now watch. Then I cut in pieces my second staff union to break the brother between Judah and Israel. You see what it resulted in? Destruction. God's wrath would be poured out and he would destroy the place and the people. Isn't that what Jesus said would happen when they betrayed him and handed him over to be killed? He goes, it's over for you. I'm going to scatter you again. Who will arise in place of Jesus whom they rejected? Here's the warning. Then Yahweh said to me, take again for yourself the equipment of a foolish shepherd. For behold, I'm going to raise up a shepherd in the land who will not care for those who face annihilation. This is what many believe to be the prophecy of the coming Antichrist. This is whom the Jews will be waiting for. Seek the young, heal the broken. He won't care about them. To heal them, seek them, sustain the one standing, but will consume the flesh of the fat sheep and tear off their hoofs. Meaning he's going to slaughter the flock. Because remember, they are his flock, his sheep. Woe to worthless shepherd who forsakes the flock. A sword will be on his arm. Meaning he's carrying a sword to slaughter. And on his right eye. Some take this to mean he'll be wounded. His arm will be totally dried up, withered, and his right eye will be utterly dimmed. Now, they believe, meaning commentators believe, as well as many early Christians believe, this is a prophecy of the Antichrist. Because they didn't want Jesus, the true shepherd, the divine shepherd. Then what's going to now arise in his place for Jews? The Antichrist, who they will run to and flock to, only to be slaughtered by him. Right? So the divine shepherd, they don't want to have anything to do with. And because they're rejecting him and only valuing him at 30 pieces silver, he will now hand them over to destruction again and will allow a wicked shepherd to then rule over them and then destroy them. That's why many people saw in this a prophecy of the coming Antichrist. All right, but do you understand who is the shepherd here? The word of Yahweh, who is Yahweh. How do I know it's Yahweh? Thus says Yahweh, my God. Shepherd the flock doomed to slaughter. Yahweh. He is the shepherd that Zechariah is standing in place of and playing out his role, right? He's playing out the role physically in front of their eyes when he takes the staff and breaks it, saying, this is what God is going to do to you. The shepherd is going to do to you because you don't want him, you reject him, you anger him, and he's done with you. He won't shepherd you anymore. So he goes, now pay me my wages, what you think is my due for shepherding you. Well, here's your value, 30 pieces of silver. But that Yahweh is the word of Yahweh.